Chapter 1148. Frowning slightly, Fang Xinjian continued to sense the surrounding situation with his high-dimensional sensory abilities. First, it was the number 1 magician empire. The remaining 7 doomsday fortresses were like 7 stars surrounding him, giving him an intense feeling of threat. Then it was the Gate of Destinies. Fang Xinjian sensed Venerable Master Zhai Xing's location, as well as the several tens of Tier 9 divine-level experts in the Gate of Destinies. Other than these, there was also the man who was speaking to him. The feeling of threat this man gave him was stronger than that of everyone else present. Hearing Yan Feibai's question, Fang Xinjian said calmly, "I don't understand what you're talking about. Is that so?" Yan Feibai smiled. "But I'm not such an unreasonable person." His gaze suddenly turned cold. The two of them stood facing each other. Yan Feibai's gaze was filled with pernicious auras, and invisible powers clashed in void space. "How about this? If you change your face and swear never to use this face again, I can consider not beating you to death." Fang Xinjian frowned, finally understanding where Yan Feibai's hostility came from. He asked directly, "You know Lianping? The silver demonic god Lianping?" The killing intent in Yan Feibai's eyes burned fiercely. "That's interesting. You know of His Majesty's existence, and yet you still dare to." In the Gate of Destinies, a hint of surprise and doubt flashed in Heavenly Emperor Malediction's gaze. What's going on? These two people know each other? Everyone turned their gazes toward Venerable Master Zhai Xing, and Malediction asked, "Do you know where this person comes from?" Venerable Master Zhai Xing explained, "He's called Fang Xinjian. He comes from a parallel universe that's similar to the Central Continent. However, the continent he's from is very weak and doesn't even have the art of longevity. Most of the time, the strongest expert there is only at Tier 1 of the divine level. He comes from such a weak world? Then they shouldn't know each other. Then what on earth are they talking about? I hope that this Fang Xinjian doesn't offend that existence," the Ice River Goddess said. "He probably won't even be able to withstand a single gaze from that existence. However, if he were to accidentally anger that existence, not only will he die, but we'll also be implicated. After all, our power systems are too similar." Just as everyone was feeling puzzled by the scene before them, a power that made them feel extremely horrified rose from Yan Feibai's body. It was a power as if a sun had exploded in Yan Feibai's body, seething and circulating to and fro in his body. In the end, with this as a driving force, Yan Feibai flicked his finger lightly toward Fang Xinjian's forehead. Just sensing the eruption of this power was enough to make the many powerhouses in the Gate of Fortune tremble in fear, let alone the shock waves that would erupt with a flick of a finger. It was an explosion that was even more terrifying than when the Doomsday Fortresses had disintegrated earlier. Piercing light rays and brutal rays filled up every inch of the space. The space in the surroundings was stretched by hundreds of millions of times, and time was slowed down by thousands of times. Under the distorted space-time, everyone felt as if 1,000 years had passed in this flick of a finger. After the distortions reached an extreme, space-time started to shatter, and absolute nothingness turned into a black path that extended out in the direction where Yan Feibai's fist had struck out. An aura as if it was the end of the universe and the Milky Way's doomsday flowed out from it. Wherever it passed by, all the neutrinos, radiation, and even space-time itself turned into nothingness, completely disappearing from the universe. Yan Feibai caused space to shatter with a flick of his finger, and the broken spatial path that had turned into nothingness extended out at light speed like it was going to extend to the ends of the universe. To think that even space is unable to repair such destructive prowess instantly? Is he trying to destroy the entire universe? Damn it! How on earth did that Fang Xinjian infuriate him? It's over. We're going to be implicated as well. This Fang Xinjian is dead meat. The Ice River Goddess continued to maintain her calm. To think that he can shatter space-time directly. A power of this level is sufficient to shake the entire universe's foundation. Venerable Master Zhai Xing blinked, recalling how Fang Xinjian had also relied on brute force to shatter spacetime previously. He said a little hesitantly, "But Fang Xinjian, there are no buts," Resurgent Divine General said. "You have no idea how terrifying this attack is. I know that this Fang Xinjian is very amazing to you, but to the multivariate universe, a character like him is nothing. To think that he can flick out such destructive prowess with just a flick of his finger. Great curse, we must retreat quickly." However, Venerable Master Zhai Xing was slightly stunned. It was because he wanted to say that the scene from earlier seemed to be something that Fang Xinjian could do as well. However, before Resurgent Divine General could finish his words, under everyone's astonished gazes, Fang Xinjian's palm grabbed onto the black path of nothingness. Then, with a slight clench, he glued the shattered space together with brute force. Even his head, which had been engulfed by the black nothingness, regenerated once again. Everyone in the Gate of Destinies fell silent. It could be said that the scene that Fang Xinjian had done earlier had completely broken their common sense by squeezing and shattering void space with his bare hands. Yan Feibai also revealed an astonished expression. However, at the next moment, he smiled. "Interesting. Where are those two fingers?" Although Fang Xinjian's performance far surpassed the estimations of everyone in the Gate of Destinies and the ancient heavenly court, to Yan Feibai, this was merely a game. "On the Doomsday Fortresses," Edwards exclaimed, "to think that he can receive an attack from a Kryptonian warrior? I wonder how much longer he can last." At the thought of this, his gaze suddenly narrowed. "It's just as well. Everyone, prepare to retreat while they're busy." This time around, other than Yan Feibai's index finger, his middle finger had also curled up. Both of his fingers accumulated power and aimed toward Fang Xinjian's chest. "It's coming. Try your best to block it if you can." A power that was like the sun's explosion once again erupted from Yan Feibai's finger. Endless nothingness shot out explosively from his fingertip, turning into a stream of formless shock waves that encompassed toward Fang Xinjian's body. This time around, Fang Xinjian did not passively receive a beating. The Royal Heavenly Great Art Martial Art Projection made a move almost at the same time. The Supreme Seal, Universe Seal, and Infinity Seal appeared in void space. Then, the three seals combined into one, turning into an ascendant heavenly seal that smashed out fiercely toward Yan Feibai. The golden hand imprint lashed out in void space. Under everyone's dumbfounded senses, it also struck out a stretch of black nothingness. It clashed fiercely with the void shock waves that Yan Feibai had shot out, turning everything into nothingness. Chapter 1149. Yan Feibai came from an influence called the Country of Delusions, and the first-generation leader of the Country of Delusions was the current silver demonic god, Lianping. From this, one could tell how powerful the Country of Delusions was. They were ranked at the top in the entire multivariate universe. Moreover, as the Country of Delusions had always maintained contact with the green demonic god's four worlds dream, they had many slots to head to the southern constellation, which was a sacred land for warriors to cultivate. Yan Feibai defeated many opponents in the Country of Delusions and obtained this slot. That was why he could head to the southern constellation to cultivate as a warrior. In the southern constellation, there were a total of 7,024 branches. Yan Feibai had gone through over 100 years of hard work, passed through layers of selection, and defeated various martial arts geniuses, mutated life forms, divine beasts, monsters, and other competitors from various corners of the multivariate universe. Only then did he get the chance to enter Krypton to cultivate. He successfully obtained the Krypton bloodline and started to cultivate the Krypton metal battle physique, eternal divine furnace, and light speed fist technique. This time around, he passed through the most vicious trial in the southern constellation and finally graduated successfully. Only then did he start his adventure in the multivariate universe. It was a pity that not long after his adventure started, he felt a deep disappointment. Weak. Too weak. Most existences in the multivariate universe, regardless of whether it was their experts, their armies, or the various natural disasters and monsters in the universe's void space, were too weak. They were so weak that Yen Feibai was unable to pique his interest at all. He even had to be careful when he spoke or transmitted messages in case he ended up tearing those weak life forms apart. It was only now that he finally encountered an opponent who could pique his interest a little. Fang Xinjian's ascendant heavenly seal broke through space, and two waves of black nothingness collided fiercely. They were on par. Breaking through spacetime. To think that he's also breaking through spacetime, Resurgent Divine General said in disbelief. How is that possible? To think that this Fang Xinjian can fight against him? The Ice River Goddess maintained her calm and said with a frown, "Look carefully. That Fang Xinjian has already unleashed his full power, while the other side is just casually attacking." Through everyone's senses, hints of black cracks appeared on the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection's conjured physique. His powers seemed to be circulating to a certain limit. On the other hand, Yen Feibai appeared to be unscathed. It was as if what he was doing was as easy as eating or drinking. When the two were compared, it was clear who was superior. At the same time he exchanged a move with Fang Xinjian, Yen Feibai's other hand reached out from afar and grabbed fiercely toward void space. If an ordinary person squeezed it hard, nothing would happen. A slightly stronger martial arts master might be able to explode the air and create a strong gust of wind if he clenched his fist. When a divine-level expert clenched his fist, space would distort, and light and heat would undergo intense changes. Right now, Yen Feibai clenched his fist hard, and his entire fist was instantly encompassed by a layer of white light. However, the center was a stretch of darkness. The surrounding light rays and microscopic particles gushed toward his palm without any regard for their lives. The super soldier trained by Krypton had created a black hole with a pinch. Faced with this scene, everyone from the ancient heavenly court was stunned. Then, they frantically activated the Gate of Fortune to resist the gravitational pull of the black hole. What kind of joke was this? Creating a black hole with one's bare hands? This was something they didn't even dare to think about. On the other side, the Doomsday Fortress's original plan to retreat was completely ruined. The terrifying suction force emitted by the black hole firmly grabbed onto them, making it hard for them to move. Damn it! The void space magical furnace has already been overloaded. There's no way for us to break free from this great gravitational force and jump into hyperspace. Edward sighed and said, "Is this a super soldier from the southern constellation? Such strength. It's against the rules. Is he really still a living creature?" Yen Feibai clenched his fist and controlled the 7 Doomsday Fortresses and the Gate of Fortune. He smiled and said, "Don't leave without saying goodbye." Powerful electromagnetic waves had just sent out this sentence, transmitting it into everyone's mind. However, at the next moment, a fist smashed fiercely onto the back of his head, causing it to lower slightly. The person who had punched out was another one of Fang Xinjian's martial art projections. The fist flashed with darkness and nothingness that represented extreme destructive prowess. However, it was still unable to cause any damage to Yen Feibai's body in the slightest. The toughness of this guy's body has already surpassed the universe's space itself? What kind of joke is this? The punch that could shatter space was ineffective. This meant that Fang Xinjian's existence was even sturdier than the universe's spacetime. Then, even if the entire universe was destroyed, Fang Xinjian would still be able to exist. It was as if he was already a world. Under Fang Xinjian's astonished gaze, Yen Feibai kicked out fiercely. His kick, propelled by stellar energy, reached 10% of light speed. Although the speed was a lot slower than Fang Xijian's light speed and superluminal speed, this was not light speed movement that was achieved through electromagnetic wave transmission, space compression, high-dimensional attacks, or other trick. Instead, there were no tricks at all. It forcefully pushed Yan Feibai's physical body to 10% of light speed. Fang Xijian also kicked out with his high-dimensional vision. Their feet collided fiercely, and amidst the swollen and torn void space, the martial art projection's feet shattered and dissipated abruptly. Then another 5 martial art projections descended from the sky. Sword light, fists, forces, and various other attacks exploded inside and outside Yan Feibai's body through superluminal speed, high-dimensional attacks, and other means. Each martial art projection possessed the power of 90,000 martial will point. When the 5 of them exploded at the same time, they could almost instantly tear the entire Earth into dust. Even the sun would be triggered by a series of collapses and explosions under such attacks, forming a disaster that could destroy the entire galaxy. However, when faced with such attacks, Yan Feibai took them all on without a care. His body only trembled slightly, and there were no signs of damage. Weak. Too weak. Don't you have any stronger moves? One of Yan Feibai's hands remained in a clenched position, maintaining the black hole's gravitational field to prevent the people from the other 2 groups from escaping. However, his other hand suddenly disappeared, turning into a lump of blurry light and shadow. Pushing the eternal divine furnace, 50% light speed fist. A myriad of light and shadow instantly exploded on Yan Feibai's palm, and the devastating fist force eroded out in all directions with his body as the center. Wherever it passed by, Fang Xijian's martial will would shatter, and no defense would be able to last for even 0.0001 seconds. The attacks from the 5 martial art projections were pushed away just like that, and they had no choice but to dodge by moving at superluminal speed. However, at the same time as the 5 martial art projections retreated, another 3 martial art projections descended. The Ascendant Heavenly Seal and the Instant Sword were activated under the superluminal speed effect of time acceleration. They instantly exploded in Yan Feibai's mind, causing the latter's head to sway slightly. Chapter 1150. At the next moment, Yan Feibai punched out across space. His fist, which circulated at 50% light speed and had the effect of space folding, struck onto the 3 martial art projections at superluminal speed, instantly crushing the 3 martial art projections that had martial will points at 90,000 points. When their attacks reached such a level, the speed of each attack would surpass light speed, and their destructive prowess would be able to destroy planets. It was almost hard to defend against them and detect them. One could only dodge before the attacks were launched or take them head-on. The 2 of them had a series of intense battles, and Yan Feibai appeared nonchalant. He held onto the black hole with one hand and clenched his fist with the other, easily suppressing the 8 martial art projections. He would also occasionally cause Fang Xijian's martial art projections to explode. Seeing that a large half of the martial art projections had been destroyed in the blink of an eye, yet Yan Feibai remained calm and unscathed, everyone present once again felt a deep sense of helplessness. It's too terrifying. That Fang Xijian is actually very powerful, the Divine General's skeleton said. We've all misjudged him. He alone is enough to go up against us, but that mysterious man is even more terrifying. He can attack at superluminal speed, create black holes with his bare hands, and has a physical body that is even sturdier than space. How on earth did he cultivate? The Ice River Goddess shook her head. This isn't the time to be talking about these. Although that Fang Xijian is powerful, he isn't the other party's match. Right now, that person is able to suppress Fang Xijian with a single hand and can even lock us down. He's probably up to no good. At the thought of this, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. It was too terrifying to be targeted by such an extremely powerful existence. They did not even have the right to escape. Heavenly Emperor Malediction's brows furrowed tightly. He felt that a myriad of thoughts were running through his mind as he thought of many solutions. However, all of them were defeated time and time again by Yen Feibai's performance. Yen Feibai was like a peak that could not be seen, causing him to be unable to see any hope. Venerable Master Zhai Xing was stunned. He had not expected that after escaping Fang Xinjian's pursuit with great difficulty, he would encounter a character that was even more terrifying than Fang Xinjian. He could not even escape. On the Doomsday Fortresses, countless high-level sorcerers started to feel despair. Even Marshal Edward's eyes were filled with panic. With the level that Yen Feibai had displayed, creating a black hole with his bare hands, shattering space with a single punch, and having an indestructible body, he was no longer an opponent that they could deal with. He could only use communication magic to pass the news to the upper echelons of the Empire, hoping that the Empire could send reinforcements to save them. Looking at the changes in the arcane technique projection, Edward sighed and said, "This person won't be able to hold on for much longer. Are we next? God, please save us." However, just as everyone thought that Fang Xinjian's attacks were useless and that he had been completely suppressed by Yen Feibai, the information hidden in the attacks finally gathered together in Yen Feibai's body. An extremely mysterious aura that contained the world's great Tao soared up. The heavens' Tao symphony had erupted. After the information contained in the many attacks arrived in Yen Feibai's body, they gathered once again, turning into the profoundness of the universe's principles. Countless great Tao and supreme truths suddenly erupted in Yen Feibai's body, causing his mind to come to a standstill. There seemed to be endless profoundness swirling in his eyes, and all of his consciousness sank into a state of probing the world's profoundness. However, Fang Xinjian knew that with the strength that his opponent had displayed, it was impossible for him to be completely lost in the heavens' Tao symphony. This could only seal off his opponent's movements temporarily. However, Fang Xinjian had not planned on using this move to defeat his opponent. Then, the Sattva sword technique. The royal heavenly great art martial art projection tore out fiercely, and the void space in front of him was torn apart like a canvas. Countless quantum foam exploded amidst the seething. A huge spatial crack appeared before them, and Earth's phantom image appeared before everyone. Then this phantom image changed abruptly. It was as if the camera had zoomed in, and countless planet-capturing devices appeared in the depths of the South Pole's ice plains. At the next moment, the scene changed once again. Countless light spots formed a stretch of starry sky, appearing behind Fang Xinjian. It was a starry sky formed by the 90 billion people he ruled and their civilization planet. Sattva sword technique. A low bellow that came from a high-dimensional world suddenly appeared in everyone's minds. Fang Xinjian understood very clearly how powerful Yen Feibai was. Therefore, from the moment he controlled Yen Feibai, he performed his strongest move without any hesitation. It was the Sattva sword technique, which represented an almost limitless destructive prowess. At the next moment, the entropy gathered from the annihilation and birth of countless parallel universes and timelines appeared in the starry sky behind Fang Xinjian. Entropy represented the degree of chaos and was irreversible. Therefore, when a universe reached its end, its entropy would definitely reach the highest value. Right now, countless timelines had disappeared due to Fang Xinjian's actions, and countless timelines had been born due to Fang Xinjian's actions. The remnant entropy from the timelines and parallel universes formed the Sattva sword technique in Fang Xinjian's hand. The entropy from countless universe remnants flowed out from the starry sky, dyeing this universe. Crimson-red light waves gathered behind Fang Xinjian, condensing into the form of a stream of sword light. If Yen Feibai's earlier actions had caused everyone present to feel astonishment and despair, then right now, the Sattva sword technique Fang Xinjian performed had completely surpassed everyone's imagination and comprehension. It felt as if countless universes had been forcefully squeezed into this universe. Red light waves flowed around Fang Xinjian's body like viscous blood, and the degree of chaos it contained was something that no one present could understand. What terrified the people from the heavenly court and the #1 magician empire even more was that as the Sattva sword technique was performed, the entropy from the endless universes started to flow into this universe. As the degree of physical chaos kept on increasing, everyone gradually realized that they were unable to control their bodies. It was because with the Sattva sword technique as the center and as the universes flowed in, the laws of this universe went through a change. The other experts had yet to get used to this change in laws and lost control of their bodies. Even the Doomsday Fortresses and the Gate of Destinies had temporarily entered a state of shutdown. Damn it, why can't I move? I've lost control of my demonic energies. At the start, it was the energy in their bodies. Subsequently, even their physical bodies went out of control. Edwards fell limp onto his seat, and the demonic energies that had gone out of control kept on erupting in his body. His entire body showed signs of burning and melting. This person? Who on earth is this person? Why does he possess a battle prowess stronger than the Kryptonian warriors? The laws of the universe are going through a change. How is this possible? Could it be that he's a representative of a demonic god? Or a descendant? Or a descendant? Chapter 1151. Within the Gate of Destinies, everyone, including Heavenly Emperor Malediction, stood rooted to the spot. Both the Ice River Goddess and the Resurgent Divine General wore expressions of horror. The scene before them had completely surpassed their understanding, and they could not even communicate with each other. The Resurgent Divine General tried his best to sense, but he could not understand what was happening to Fang Xinjian's body. What exactly did he do? What kind of attack is this? Fang Xinjian. We were all wrong. He is much scarier than that man. The Ice River Goddess only felt that the current Fang Xinjian seemed to be endless. No matter how she tried to sense him, she was unable to see everything about him. Unknowable, unspeakable, unfathomable. This realm. This martial path. Heavenly Emperor Malediction was moved. At this moment, he felt as though he had seen the highest realm of the martial path. At the next moment, everyone felt that their bodies were starting to disintegrate, and their thoughts were starting to become chaotic. As the rules of the universe changed, their conjured physique's original structures could no longer be maintained. Their thoughts and consciousness could no longer continue to circulate according to their original rules. They were like melted candles, starting to dissipate into void space. On Fang Xinjian's side, this was also the first time he had performed the Sattva sword technique that had 90 billion people. Even he himself was unable to predict the prowess of this attack. The only thing he could do was to use all his power to guide the Sattva sword technique to slash out fiercely toward the other party. The crimson-red sword light descended on Yen Feibai inch by inch. Right now, the dazed look in Yen Feibai's eyes had already faded away slowly, and he had recovered from the futility of the heavenly Tao order. However, after sensing the prowess of the Sattva sword technique, the expression in his eyes changed drastically. Are you kidding me? Why do you have such authority? In Yen Feibai's body, the eternal divine furnace was activated at full power, and the power of 12 stars burst forth. Then he pushed the Krypton metal battle physique to unleash an effect that was several tens or hundreds of times stronger. No one can kill me. Endless light rose up from Yen Feibai's body, and he performed the light speed fist technique, despair propagation. All the powers in his body collided at the speed of light, causing all the particles to turn into a state of absolute stillness, thus forming absolute zero. Moreover, it was not just the matter that had come to a standstill. Even space-time had come to a standstill. Heat energy and light energy had all come to a standstill. All that was left was a darkness that represented despair, spreading out in all directions. 1 second. No, just 1/10,000th of a second. As long as I can stop him for a split second, I can. Even with Yan Feibai's confidence, he did not plan on going head-on against Fang Xinjian's Sattva sword technique. He only wanted to use despair propagation to temporarily seal off Fang Xinjian's attacks and then escape from this universe. However, the Sattva sword technique still surpassed his imagination. When his light-speed fist technique came into contact with the red sword light, he felt like an idiot who wanted to use a stick of ice cream to seal up the entire ocean. Without giving him any time to react, Yan Feibai's body, thoughts, and everything else had already reached a limit as the entropy increased. He turned into an unknown substance whose degree of chaos had reached a limit and disappeared completely from this universe. With his disappearance, Fang Xinjian immediately started to restrain the prowess of the Sattva sword technique. However, this power was far too violent. Even Fang Xinjian had to spend several decades before he had no choice but to perform the Sattva sword technique again to clash against it. Only then did he restrain the Sattva sword technique completely. Moreover, due to the extremely strong gravitational forces and space-time distortions, the several decades he had spent were just a few seconds compared to the surroundings. When he retracted the Sattva sword technique and returned to void space, he discovered that the void space had already gone through an irreversible change. The increase in entropy was irreversible. Although Fang Xinjian had already used all his powers to restrain the Sattva sword technique at the very end, the changes he had brought to this universe were already irreversible. The void environment, which had originally been illuminated by the supernova explosion, was now a vacuum that only contained pure heat energy. Accompanied by the severe increase in entropy, all the matter in the universe within a range of 1 light-year turned into pure heat energy, forming a small-scale heat-death phenomenon. Heat death represented one of the ways in which the universe would end. With the increase in entropy, all matter would eventually turn into pure heat energy. Right now, this phenomenon had appeared in this universe due to Fang Xinjian's Sattva sword technique. When the heat-death phenomenon filled up the entire universe, all matter would disappear, leaving behind only evenly distributed and identical heat energy. Time, space, and everything else would lose their meaning, and the universe would be as good as dead. At the sight of this scene, Fang Xinjian gained a deeper understanding of the Sattva sword technique in his hand. This was an attack that could truly end the universe and radiate out to countless parallel worlds. However, just then, the surrounding space-time started to change once again. Under Fang Xinjian's astonished gaze, time seemed to have started to flow in reverse. In the void space within a range of 1 light second, time flowed in reverse, and heat energy once again turned into matter. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were pushing the timeline in reverse. The Doomsday Fortresses and the Gate of Destinies appeared one after another, and even Yan Feibai's figure reappeared. Everything seemed to have returned to the state before Fang Xinjian unleashed the Sattva sword technique. Time flowed in reverse, and a large-scale time flowed in reverse, appearing before Fang Xinjian. Phew, that was close. I almost failed miserably. Yan Feibai let out a breath and looked at the hourglass in his consciousness, feeling extremely grateful. Thankfully, I made a trip back home after graduation and used all my belongings and loans to exchange for the time reversal sand. Otherwise, I don't know how long I'll have to spend to be reborn. Although each official in the country of delusions had left behind their own mark and could borrow the government's powers to be reborn in the river of time, the time spent and the cultivation lost could not be recovered. Therefore, Yan Feibai had spent all his belongings to exchange for the time reversal sand. The people from the ancient heavenly court also borrowed Yan Feibai's light to be revived from the heat death. However, they exchanged glances, unable to understand what on earth had happened. Ever since Fang Xinjian performed the Sattva sword technique, the battle before them had already surpassed their understanding. However, they knew one thing. Fang Xinjian's attack had once again been countered by the other party. Be it Heavenly Emperor Malediction, Ice River Goddess, or resurgent divine general, all of them were a little numb. Yen Feibai had refreshed their understanding of strength time and time again. Each time they thought that they had reached their limits, Yen Feibai would break through their limits and display various unbelievable remarkable abilities. The Ice River goddess sighed and said, "Is there really a possibility of winning against an opponent like this?" Compared to the ancient heavenly court's ignorance, Edwards, who was in the Doomsday Fortresses, understood. Time reversal. This is time reversal. To think that the rumors are true. Edwards immediately recalled the rumor that had been circulating in the multivariate universe. The higher existences in the country of delusions had the authority to reverse time. It's over. It's meaningless. All of our actions are meaningless. Edwards grabbed the hair on his head fiercely. Even if the entire number 1 magician empire, all the Doomsday Fortresses, and all the magician marshals rush over, it'll be meaningless. He's no longer a living being from the same dimension as us. Although Edwards was unable to understand Fang Xinjian's Sattva sword technique, it was still considered a type of attack method and did not break away from the logic of the world. However, the reversal of time, especially the reversal of time on such a large scale, was already illogical and unexplainable. It was a miracle that surpassed the universe's rules. Just the thought of the various space-time paradoxes caused by it gave Edwards a headache for a very long time. At this moment, he felt as if he had been training in an online game for half a year, only to discover that this online game actually had a shop after coming out of the mountain. Compared to the people from the country of delusions, the difference was like that between an ordinary player and a VIP player. The only way he could put up a resistance was to delete his account and stop playing. On the other side, Yen Feibai looked at Fang Xinjian with a hint of mockery in his gaze. "To think that you're able to force me to use the time reversal sand. You're really amazing. For the Aboriginals, you're already a miracle. But you should understand now, right? To a certain extent, I can't be killed. It's the same no matter how many times you try. But as long as I succeed once, you'll be dead for sure. Moreover, you won't be able to continue taking on the attacks from earlier, right? Do you understand? You're at most an ordinary player in this world, while I'm a pay-to-win player. This is an intrinsic difference, and it's not something that can be made up for with hard work." Fang Xinjian did not say anything. Other than the Royal Heavenly Great Art martial art projection, he retracted all the other martial art projections. Simultaneously, his conjured physique started to break down, and a large number of cracks appeared on the surface of his body. Waves of black nothingness extended out from the cracks on his conjured physique. His lifespan was burning, and his martial will was growing crazily. However, Yen Feibai smiled. "You can't even maintain your form. Do you still want to go all out?" "Can't maintain my form?" The corners of Fang Xinjian's lips curled up, revealing a hint of a brutal smile. "Idiot, don't you understand? The reason why I maintain this form isn't to protect me. It's to protect you guys and this world." Chapter 1152. In the Gate of Destinies, Heavenly Emperor Malediction and the others gradually reacted as well. Is it time reversal? A large-scale time reversal? To think that even the dead can be revived. Tier 9 divine-level experts had grasped a portion of the prowess of time after all and could keep on recovering their bodies. However, this scene of resurrection from the dead and a large-scale time reversal still astonished them. "How are we going to fight this?" Resurgent Divine General could not help but shout. "Could it be that there's no price to pay at all?" The Ice River Goddess stared in the direction of Fang Xinjian and Yen Feibai. "Let's see how Fang Xinjian deals with this. If he can't hold on, he'll be dead meat." Venerable Master Zhai Xing said in astonishment. "He's burning his lifespan? Fang Xinjian is starting to go all out. He's been forced to his limit." The experts from the central world naturally grasped the method to convert lifespan. Almost at the same instant that Fang Xinjian burned his lifespan, they had already sensed this strange wave. On the other hand, as Fang Xinjian burned and transformed his lifespan intensely, his martial will grew at a rapid rate. 100,000, 120,000, 150,000. As the power of his martial will grew, the surrounding space was soon unable to adapt to the existence of such great power. Very soon, it started to shatter and dissipate. Black nothingness extended out from Fang Xinjian's body, and his conjured physique kept on shattering and cracking like a porcelain doll. At the sight of this scene, Yan Feibai frowned. Fang Xinjian's power kept on increasing, giving him a bad feeling. No matter how confident he was, he did not plan on letting Fang Xinjian continue to improve. Therefore, Yan Feibai tapped out with a finger, and it was another light-speed fist technique. Absolute. Look. Transmit. Broadcast. Absolute Zero extended out toward where Fang Xinjian was. However, even the extreme state of the universe was no longer able to do anything to Fang Xinjian. The moment the aura of Absolute Zero got close to Fang Xinjian, the black nothingness on his body was immediately pushed back, returning to its active state in void space. Then, it was shattered by pure power. There was an increasing amount of black aura on Fang Xinjian's body, and his entire body was gradually encompassed by layers of black nothingness. His martial will continued to rise rapidly without stopping. 160,000, 180,000, 200,000 in the high-dimensional space-time that could not be observed from an optical perspective. The burning of one's lifespan grew increasingly intense. Fang Xinjian could sense that there were all sorts of curled-up dimensions, quantum foams that had opened up, and even some projections that came from other timelines. Endless power kept on gushing into his body, and his martial will broke through to 200,000 points. Fang Xinjian's power had completely gone out of control. The last bit of his conjured physique had completely dissipated, and he had turned into a blurry black shadow. One could only vaguely make out a humanoid shape. Fang Xinjian's control over his powers was still not comparable to that of Yan Feibai, who had been cultivating on Krypton for many years. Although his martial will at 200,000 points was still a little weaker than Yan Feibai's control over the powers, he was no longer able to control them completely. It could be said that even if Fang Xinjian, who had a martial will at 200,000 points, tried his best to retract the powers in his body, his very existence was still destroying the foundation of the entire universe's existence. Even if he were to just stand there without moving, the space-time in this universe would continue to shrink incessantly, and it would be completely destroyed one day. This was also the reason why Fang Xinjian had not been willing to use this move all this while. A power with a martial will of over 90,000 points had already surpassed his control, and he could not bring this power back to his world. It was because it would cause the entire world to be destroyed. It could be said that even if he were to win against Yan Feibai, he could only leave the royal heavenly great art martial art projection in this universe and wait for this universe to be destroyed before moving to another universe. Although the martial will of 200,000 points was still not enough to surpass Yan Feibai's power, the fact that it had increased by so many times within such a short period of time still made Yan Feibai feel astonished. What kind of martial technique is this? To think that it can increase by so much within such a short period of time? I mustn't let him continue on like this. Yan Feibai's gaze narrowed, and the eternal divine furnace in his body was activated once again. The eternal divine furnace was a martial technique that engulfed and spat out stars, making use of the stars' powers to stimulate the Kryptonian physique. The Kryptonian physique and Kryptonian bloodline possessed unbelievable conversion rates, and they were ranked among the best even across the entire multivariate universe. Even if one did not cultivate the eternal divine furnace's Kryptonian metal battle physique, just by relying on the Kryptonian physique to bask in the sun every day, one would be able to push continents, dash at several hundred times the speed of sound, and withstand the impact of asteroid. Moreover, once one started cultivating the eternal divine furnace and absorbed stars into their bodies to unleash the powers of the Kryptonian physique, their prowess would reach an unbelievable realm. Right now, after Yen Feibai activated the eternal divine furnace, his aura immediately surpassed that of Fang Xinjian's. Accompanied by piercing white light all over his body, he struck out a punch. It was the light speed fist. Lightning speed fist at 80%. There were no fanciful tricks, no schemes, and no dazzling special effects. Right now, Yen Feibai's fist smashed out with the greatest power and at the greatest speed. How terrifying would a punch that was propelled at 80% light speed be? Every punch could destroy a star, tear apart a galaxy, and evaporate a black hole. Right now, the number of punches that Yen Feibai had struck out did not just stop at one punch. Boom, 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 boom. Piercing white light kept on flashing out explosively from Yen Feibai's body, and his punch, which was at 80% light speed, turned into densely packed white light that smashed out toward Fang Xinjian's body. Bang! The two fists collided, and shattered space extended out from between their fists. Yen Feibai kicked out with a kick that was at 80% light speed, bringing with it the aura of the earth colliding into the sun. It cut out many shattered void spaces and clashed fiercely with Fang Xinjian's knee, instantly shattering the space within a range of 1,000 lis. The black aura of nothingness and Yen Feibai's fists clashed intensely time and time again, and the shattering of space intensified once again. The battlefield between the two of them was completely encompassed by black nothingness, and Yen Feibai, who was covered in scorching white light, kept on darting about. His lightning speed fist clashed time and time again with Fang Xinjian's body of nothingness. The gate of destinies kept on retreating. Faced with the battlefield where the shattering of space kept on spreading out, they could only choose to keep on retreating. There's no way to observe Fang Xinjian's body anymore, Heavenly Emperor Malediction said solemnly. However, Yen Feibai still retains his physical structure. Judging from the light waves on his body, we can still roughly determine the battle situation between the two of them. Although Fang Xinjian is being suppressed, the Ice River Goddess was a little dazed, in slight disbelief, and also a little terrified. But his martial will seems to be still increasing. I can sense that his lifespan is burning incessantly. Why is this happening? After burning for such a long time, even several 10,000 years of lifespan would have been converted, right? The resurgent divine general said in astonishment. How long is his lifespan? Chapter 1153. Martial Will 230,000 points. 250,000 points. Why is your strength still increasing? Yen Feibai struck out another punch, and his fist clashed against Fang Xinjian's hand of nothingness. This time around, he had a feeling that it was hard to fend off. Hints of cracks appeared on the surface of his corium metal battle physique. Moreover, he could sense that Fang Xinjian's strength index was still increasing incessantly. I don't believe that you'll be able to continue holding on like this. Yen Feibai raised his brows and decided not to fight against Fang Xinjian anymore. Fang Xinjian's explosive state was clearly abnormal, and he did not believe that Fang Xinjian would be able to continue on like this. Wouldn't that mean that Fang Xinjian would become a perpetual motion machine? Therefore, the white light on the surface of Yen Feibai's body retracted, allowing Fang Xinjian's aura of nothingness to hit his body. Then a layer of invisible barrier appeared on the surface of his body, and he suddenly contracted and changed. In the blink of an eye, he had shrunk to the size of a light spot. It was another light speed fist technique that he had activated with the eternal furnace, inextinguishable light. This was to eliminate one's physical body's mass through mass energy conversion, eventually turning it into a pure superluminal substance called tachyon. With this, one could enter the superluminal domain and be immune to all attacks below light speed. Of course, under such a situation, the user would not be able to attack others. It was a purely defensive move. Right now, Yan Feibai wanted to maintain this state and wait for Fang Xinjian's explosive phase to pass. All this while, Fang Xinjian's superluminal speed had merely been superluminal speed in mathematical terms. He had only made use of the distortions in spacetime and had yet to truly step into the superluminal domain. Therefore, when faced with Yan Feibai's inextinguishable light, he was unable to attack. However, what Yan Feibai did not know was that he could not wait for Fang Xinjian's explosive phase to pass. Martial will 300,000 points, 370,000 points, 400,000 points. Fang Xinjian's strength continued to increase under the lifespan conversion. The entire battlefield was encompassed by endless nothingness, and Yan Feibai's body could no longer be observed. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Yan Feibai's countenance gradually changed from confidence, puzzlement, astonishment, and disbelief to a perplexed expression. This guy. Is he using cheats? How can it still grow? Right now, Fang Xinjian's martial will had already reached 1 million points. The black void zone that he had turned into extended out in all directions at light speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already engulfed the area within a range of several 10 million kilometers. The Gate of Destinies and the Doomsday Fortresses had retreated a great distance, and they were no longer able to sense the battle between Fang Xinjian and Yan Feibai. However, the expansion of the Black Void Zone was very clear. It's still growing. The Ice River Goddess expression was filled with reverence. If it were to continue spreading like this, in about 10 billion years, all space-time, matter, and energy in the entire universe would be completely vaporized. That man is finished, and so is the universe. The Ice River Goddess looked at that stretch of nothingness that kept on expanding, and a look of worship gradually surfaced in her eyes. Fang Xinjian has already completely surpassed his opponent and surpassed this universe. The resurgent divine general's face was filled with agitation. It's really the invincible realm of martial arts. Before today, who among us would have thought that a person's powers could reach such a level? We should try to see if we can communicate with him. If we can get some pointers. Venerable Master Zhai Xing's eyes were filled with hints of terror. Faced with Fang Xinjian, he could not bring up any thoughts of resisting. He could only retreat slowly, wanting to leave this place. However, he had only taken a few steps back when he was stopped by the Tier 9 divine level experts in the surroundings. The Ice River Goddess threw him a sideways glance and said, "Don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being blind and offending such a superior existence." The resurgent divine general said, "Zhai Xing, do you think that you'll still be able to escape after offending such a character? It's fine if you die alone, but don't bring harm to our entire civilization." Faced with the several tens of Tier 9 divine level experts' gazes that harbored ill intentions, Venerable Master Zhai Xing completely gave up on resisting. A hint of remorse and grayish-white color flashed in his eyes. Damn it! Damn it! If I had known that this Fang Xinjian is so powerful, I'd only go and offend him if there was something wrong with my head. In the Doomsday Fortresses, Edward sighed and said, "Is it over? The Empire's upper echelon should prepare to migrate the Empire. This universe is already too dangerous. After this battle, this man will probably become the overlord of this universe," Edwards thought. But the people from the country of delusions probably won't let him off so easily. Concurrently, Fang Xinjian's martial will was still increasing incessantly. 1 million. 2 million. The soul-stirring powers seethed to and fro in void space, causing Yan Feibai's heart to palpitate a little. If he were to return to his original state, he would probably be torn into microscopic particles within 1/1000th of a second and die completely. Although he could rely on the time reversal sand to revive, if he could not even hold on for a second, then it would be meaningless no matter how many times he revived. At this moment, Yan Feibai had no choice but to admit it. "I've lost." If his face were to appear right now, he would definitely be gritting his teeth with a grim countenance. I've lost. To think that I've lost to a native from outside the country. Impossible. How can something like this possibly happen? With Yen Feibai's pride, how hard would it be for him to admit to this? It was as if a sharp needle had been pierced fiercely at the tip of his heart. Moreover, looking at the rate at which Fang Xinjian's powers were increasing, Yen Feibai understood that he would not be able to catch up to him within 1,000 years. At the same time, another practical problem was placed in front of him. The inextinguishable light's duration is about to end. Even though Yen Feibai had grasped Krypton's light-speed fist technique, there was still a time limit for him to enter Tachyon's supraluminal domain. If I were to turn into a physical state here, I'd be killed and revived over and over again. This might take several thousand years, or even several tens of thousands of years, until the other party takes the initiative to let me off. At the thought of this, Yen Feibai's mood became even worse. He had the strongest defense, the inextinguishable light, and the undying body's time reversal. However, with the two added together, he had unknowingly sunk into an even more terrifying situation. Furthermore, having sunk into a supraluminal state, he was unable to interfere with ordinary physical domains. He could not even request for help. Just as Yen Feibai sank into this desperate situation, his consciousness trembled fiercely. At this moment, he suddenly felt that two great existences seemed to be casting their gazes over from an extremely far distance and an endless amount of time away. Who is it? Who's paying attention to this place? Normally speaking, even if someone were to really pay attention to him across countless space-time and universes, Yen Feibai would not be able to sense it. However, this was not the case now. This feeling of being paid attention to was like an ant raising its head to look at the sky and seeing a myriad of starlight shining down on its body. One of them made Yen Feibai feel a sense of familiarity. He immediately reacted and said extremely agitatedly, "It's His Majesty!" To be able to be on par with His Majesty, is the other person paying attention to this place a demonic god? At this moment, the two supreme existences in the multivariate universe turned their gazes over at the same time. It was Fang Shijian's changes that had caught their attention. Chapter 1154. Yen Feibai was not the only one who had sensed the attention that was shining down like starlight. Fang Xinjian had also sensed it. The pitch-black shadow that Fang Xinjian had turned into lifted its head abruptly. It was as if it had pierced through endless space-time and came into contact with two extremely majestic and great existences. Who is it? There was no reply, no communication. The other party, or rather, demonic god-level existences would not communicate with ordinary things at all. It was because they could just think about what they wanted. Therefore, at the next moment, the nothingness that Fang Xinjian had turned into seemed to tremble a little. Then he sensed that his powers had started to decline, and the surrounding nothingness in the shattered space had turned back into vacuum. His martial will jumped from over 1 million down to over 10,000. Then he exited the divine level, exited the second transition, and returned to the state of a mortal. Time reversal silently descended on Fang Xinjian's body, turning him back to how he was 5 years ago. At the next moment, due to the vacuum environment, he started to suffocate, cool down, and was on the verge of death. In the end, his vision sank into darkness. By the time Fang Xinjian regained his senses, the scene where his cultivation had regressed earlier had already disappeared without a trace. It was as if everything had just been an illusion. However, Fang Xinjian knew that the real feeling, the feeling of his body regressing, was definitely not as simple as an illusion. A short moment later, Fang Xinjian discovered that his martial will had started to degrade once again. However, this time around, it started to recover not long after. Fang Xinjian instantly understood what was going on. These two guys, they're fighting over my control over time. One is reversing time, while the other is reversing it. Just as Fang Xinjian understood the situation, another wave of attacks arrived. Thousands upon thousands of indescribable points that transcended all colors, appearances, sizes, and weights appeared within a range of 1,000 lis. These are singularities? Thousands upon thousands of singularities were thrown into the universe. What kind of effect would they bring about? 10,000 Big Bangs happening at the same time. How terrifying and magnificent would that be? Along with the endless shooting of photons, mats, neutrinos, and protons, a high temperature of hundreds of billions of degrees came head-on. After 0.1 seconds, the temperature began to drop, and the various dimensions of time and space began to open up. 1 second later, the neutrinos escape. 10 seconds later, atomic nuclei began to form. The quantum vacuum continued to surge and soon surpassed the total energy of the entire universe. As for Fang Xinjian, Yan Feibai, the Doomsday Fortresses, and the Gate of Destinies, they had all turned into cosmic radiation during this Big Bang and spread out to every corner of the universe in the next several tens of billions of years. However, this was only one of the possibilities when the two demon god powerhouses made their move. Fang Xinjian took a deep breath and came back to his senses. There was still a boundless black void in front of his eyes. It was the instant when the two supreme existences noticed him, as if the explosion just now was just an illusion. Has time been reversed again? No, that's impossible. If he could instantly reverse a myriad of Big Bangs, he could totally do many other things. For example, he could pack up the entire universe and bring it away. There's no need for him to reverse it to this space-time. Just as Fang Xinjian was making various guesses, another wave of attacks arrived. The dark matter and dark energy, which took up 96% of the entire universe, seethed fiercely. The Big Bang from 20 billion years ago seemed to have been accelerated, and the expansion of the universe kept on accelerating. The individual galaxies also accelerated and expanded, breaking out of their original arrangements very soon. Along with the change in the dark energy pressure and density, all spatial distances became infinitely large. Due to the change in distance, the entire universe's gravitational and electromagnetic forces started to lose their effectiveness. Celestial bodies disintegrated, and any matter that relied on gravitational and electromagnetic forces to support themselves started to split apart. Every atom was crushed into dust, and the entire universe started to tear apart. In this great expansion, all known matter was no longer important. All intelligent life forms finally realized that the dark matter and dark energy, which took up 96% of the entire universe, were the main components of the universe. Fang Xinjian's consciousness also instantly sank into a stretch of nothingness after 16 minutes of the expansion and acceleration, never to wake up again. Phew! When he opened his eyes once again, everything returned to the moment when the other party had been observing him. At the same time, the attack arrived. A jade-white finger reached out from void space and tapped lightly on Fang Xinjian's forehead. However, it was such a simple action that instantly triggered a terrifying doomsday disaster. It was because the mass contained in this finger had surpassed the mass of the entire universe. Therefore, at the instant when the finger arrived in this spacetime, a great collapse occurred. All matter was unavoidably captured by this terrifying gravitational source, and the entire universe gradually slid in this direction. It was as if the entire universe was being replayed in reverse, returning to its original appearance as a singularity for several tens of billions of years, completely reversing the process of the Big Bang. As the first object that the finger touched, Fang Xinjian was instantly turned into an infinitely small dot, losing all of his subjective consciousness. Huff huff! When he came back to his senses, Fang Xinjian grabbed his head abruptly and let out a cry of pain. It was an attack that could make even Fang Xinjian cry out in pain. One could imagine how painful it was. At the next moment, a hint of sharpness flashed in his eyes, and his entire aura suddenly changed. His body, which had turned into a stretch of nothingness, suddenly retracted. In almost an instant, all of the powers that had gone out of control had returned to his body. Fang Xinjian had taken on a human form once again and had perfect control over all of the martial will in his body. When Yan Feibai, who was in the distance, saw the human form that had reappeared, he dropped to his knees and said agitatedly, "Your Majesty, you've come." However, at the next moment, Yan Feibai's eyes were completely covered by a yellow glow, and the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of an evil smile. Electromagnetic waves that surpassed light speed were emitted from their bodies and instantly clashed together, triggering the Big Bang in the universe. A new universe was born from the Big Bang, from the clash of their attacks. Countless pieces of information were exchanged to and fro in the singularity, and in the next several tens of billions of years, they would turn into many wonders in the universe as the Big Bang occurred. As the two parties' powers collided and caused the Big Bang, the information they exchanged would also be sent out along with the radiation from the Big Bang and the universe's expansion. A new universe and a new timeline were instantly born from this Big Bang. To the demonic gods, there was no difference between the past, the future, and the present. At the instant the timeline was born, they had already occupied it completely. Chapter 1155. As the Big Bang occurred and the universe expanded, the information in the gravitational singularity continued to be transmitted out in all directions. In the new universe, 5 billion years after the Big Bang, on a certain planet with life in the Tiangang galaxy, the current sect master of the Absolute Heaven sect stood with his hands behind his back, looking up at the starry sky. Many experts from the pugilistic world had fallen or knelt down behind him. Each of them looked at the Absolute Heaven sect's sect master with astonishment, admiration, and astonishment. "I've sought defeat but can't get it. To think that it's so lonely to be unrivaled in the world. In this world, the only one who can go up against me is the heavens?" At the next moment, in the universe's vacuum, a yellow ray instantly encompassed the entire planet. The overly powerful radiation vaporized all the lives on the entire planet. At the same time as they were vaporized, the information contained in this ray of radiation appeared in almost everyone's minds. "Lianping, who gave you permission to snatch what belongs to me?" 10 billion years later, in the Milky Way's aquamarine planet, in the Astronomical Observation Center, a golden-haired man shouted out in astonishment, "What is this? Guys, I seem to have received a stream of radiation that was transmitted out from the Big Bang. What kind of joke is this? How is this possible? Let's take a look. Wait a minute, I'll play out the results of my analysis." At the next instant, a voice rang out from the computer. "Petrifying blazing calamity, you're courting death." The people who heard this exchanged glances. A short moment later, one of them said, "Idiot, which radio station or which radio signal did you receive?" 15 billion years after the Big Bang, countless space fleets floated in a stretch of dark vacuum space. 20 years ago, the fish planet's government had detected a stream of powerful radiation shooting out toward their mother planet. Based on the scientists' predictions, this stream of powerful radiation would destroy all life in the entire star system. In order to fend off this wave of powerful radiation, the entire fish planet's government had joined forces and formed the Planetary United Government. This was done in order to rapidly upgrade their technology and fend off this natural disaster. 20 years passed, and all the fish planet's people lived according to their schedules. They left early in the morning and returned late at night, working 6 days a week. All resources were distributed according to their needs. Finance, entertainment, and art had all fallen to the lowest point in history. Everything was developed toward simple and practical use. At this moment, the 3 space carriers had taken 1 million elites into space, and the remaining fish-swimming planet could only wait for their deaths on the mother planet. There were also countless automatic ones that flowed down in an attempt to resist the strong radiation. However, at the next moment, as a wave of yellow light swept across the entire planet, and half an hour later, it swept across the escaping space carrier, a mental voice rang out in everyone's mind. Haha, someone is flustered and exasperated. At the same time they heard this, the cells in countless people's bodies went through a series of changes. The genes in their bodies evolved intensely under the stimulation of the strong radiation. All sorts of flames, electricity, and air currents appeared on the surface of their bodies, and the people of Fish Swimming Planet welcomed the era of superpowers. The silver demonic god, Lianping, and the yellow demonic god, Fearful Blazing Disaster. A slight collision between the two of them triggered the Big Bang of the universe. While destroying the original universe, it created a new universe. It created a timeline that was tens of billions of years old and a future that was tens of billions of years long. 4 demonic gods, at the instant the timeline was created, the past and future would appear before their eyes. Not only would the information they left behind echo out in the new universe, but they would also be able to arrive at different points in time in this timeline. For example, at the instant when the Big Bang had just started, they would be able to arrive at the end of the universe several tens of billions of years later. It was like a snake creeping along the timeline. As the two parties exchanged blows, which caused the Big Bang of the universe, Fang Xinjian's consciousness disappeared once again before recovering. At the instant he recovered, he once again sensed his situation. He returned to the moment when he had been the focus of attention earlier. Concurrently, his consciousness swelled up abruptly, and he sensed endless information gushing into his brain. It was information from other parallel universes that had crossed timelines. He finally understood that the waves of attacks, the repeated exchanges, and the repeated deaths were indeed not the effects of time reversal. What he had seen, experienced, and remembered, the scenes of him being instantly killed, the repeated attacks, and even the final attack that created a new universe, were not illusions, nor were they the effects of time reversal. They were his experiences from countless other timelines. Just as both parties were focusing their attention on me, from this point onward, as both parties made their moves, countless possibilities were derived, and countless timelines were born. In each timeline, both parties displayed different means, resulting in different outcomes, and creating different futures. Due to my high-dimensional sensory abilities, from the moment I was focused on, countless timelines were attacked at the same time. The intense changes in time and space, as well as the countless dimensions, allowed me to unintentionally receive information transmitted from other timelines. A battle that encompasses countless timelines. Are the demonic gods making their moves? But with so many timelines, how do they decide on the final outcome? There were too many timelines, too many probabilities, and too many possibilities. As long as both parties were evenly matched in one of the timelines, then the victories in the other timelines would be meaningless. More and more information gushed into Fang Xinjian's mind. There were all sorts of scenes of the end of the universe, as well as all sorts of attacks that interfered with spacetime and matter. There were even Yen Feibai, the Doomsday Fortresses, the Gate of Destinies, and other influences that were directly strengthened and controlled to fight. There were even scenes of his thoughts being instantly assimilated and brainwashed. Just as he was guessing the direction of the battle, he felt his entire body tense up. It was as if he was being controlled by some tremendous power, and both his consciousness and physical body kept on rising. "What's going on? Don't move." A voice that was as cold as ice rang out in Fang Xinjian's mind. Someone's going to flip the table. Fang Xinjian felt as if his body and consciousness had instantly crossed countless dimensions. In the end, he could not even sense his body and consciousness anymore. He could only see an extremely small dot appearing before him amidst a stretch of chaos. A comprehension appeared in Fang Xinjian's mind. Singularity? Return to the past? I've arrived before the Big Bang of this universe? I've arrived in an era where time and space don't even exist? Fang Xinjian was also unable to understand the current situation. However, before he could understand the current situation, the Big Bang descended. Amidst the stretch of chaos, the singularity suddenly unleashed an endless amount of light. The Big Bang of the universe was about to arrive. Looking at this hair-raising scene, Fang Xinjian's mind was filled with astonishment from the birth of a universe and that miraculous scene. However, at the next moment, a big hand reached out from the chaos and grabbed onto the singularity that was about to explode. The hand relied on its own power to extinguish the Big Bang that was about to take place. At the sight of this, Fang Xinjian immediately understood. This is to stop the Big Bang of the universe and extinguish all the future of this universe at one go. The words that the cold voice had said earlier suddenly appeared in his mind. Is this what flipping the table means? Earlier on, Fang Xinjian had still been thinking about it. Countless probabilities, timelines, and outcomes would be created due to the fight between two parties at a single point in time. If both parties were evenly matched, then how could the outcome of the fight between the two parties be decided? Then, he saw the scene before him. To think that one party had arrived before the birth of the universe, in the midst of chaos where there was no concept of time. By extinguishing the singularity in one go, it was equivalent to extinguishing all the future of this universe. This was what flipping the table meant. Immediately after, another beam of white light shone in. The white light suddenly appeared like an unparalleled assassin who had been waiting for a very long time, thrusting out his sword. The sword light pierced into the big hand that was grabbing onto the singularity. As the white light appeared, the hand that was grabbing onto the singularity trembled slightly before loosening its grip and disappearing. Without the restraints of the huge hand, the Big Bang of the universe continued. All the timelines that had disappeared and the destroyed parallel universes were born once again. Chapter 1156. The singularity continued to initiate the Big Bang, and everything in the timeline went back on track. Fang Xinjian only felt a blur before his eyes as he arrived in the universe's void 12 billion years later. Before him, a black-clothed man stood proudly in void space. That ice-cold disposition and sharp gleam gave Fang Xinjian a sense of familiarity. Fang Xinjian blurted out, "It's you." The black-clothed man before him was the person who had changed Fang Xinjian's life 5 years ago. He was also the person who had brought them to Miracle World according to the previous Pope's memories, as well as the person who had taken away Fang Yueru's corpse. The black-clothed man turned, revealing a face that bore a slight resemblance to Fang Xinjian's. If the previous Pope's appearance was 80 to 90% similar to Fang Xinjian, then this person's appearance was only 20 to 30% similar to Fang Xinjian's. Looking at the other party's appearance, Fang Xinjian immediately reacted. "I have your bloodline in my body? The other half of my bloodline comes from you?" The black-clothed man threw him a cold glance, not saying a word. A thought, accompanied by a tremendous amount of information, gushed into Fang Xinjian's mind. After rapidly reading through the contents of the information, Fang Xinjian finally understood what had happened. Among the 13 demonic gods, petrifying blazing disaster had stolen the bloodlines of the silver demonic god and the black-clothed man before him. However, what petrifying blazing disaster did not know was that in terms of bloodline sensing abilities, the black-clothed man before him was even above that of the demonic gods. Therefore, during the nurturing process, the black-clothed man had discovered Fang Xinjian's existence due to the connection between their bloodlines. However, the black-clothed man did not stop him. Instead, he watched from the sidelines and secretly interfered with the nurturing process, causing changes to appear in Fang Xinjian and the others' growth. "So, not only do I have your bloodlines, but I even have a portion of your consciousness?" Fang Xinjian said with a frown. Even demonic gods were not absolutely invincible. Although their powers gathered and dispersed unpredictably, there were indeed some space-time and some locations where they were weak. Just like how mountains and rivers had their ups and downs, the demon god's power was scattered throughout the endless spacetime, and there were also strong and weak ones. Just like the battle Fang Xinjian had just witnessed, it was the center of the demon god battlefield. The intensity of the battle was so strong that ordinary beings could not even detect it. As the battle progressed, the history of the past and the future constantly changed. The memories of the mortals changed as well. They were unable to sense the countless exchanges between the fiend celestials. The miracle world that Fang Xinjian had grown up in was far away from the center of the battlefield, so the intensity of the battles was a lot lower. They were merely affected by the repercussive waves from the demonic god's powers. It was just like the many worlds that were created during the battles between the demonic god. The Ring of Time strategy was also a method in which the demonic gods used the smallest amount of power to achieve the greatest results in the battles at the periphery of the battlefield. In those battlefields, a large amount of the demonic gods' powers would be channeled into the mortals' bodies in order to stimulate more chaotic quantum jumps that transcend spacetime and achieve the goal of controlling the changes in the multidimensional probabilities. So, after you discovered the petrifying blazing disasters plan, you didn't interfere and instead added fuel to the fire. You even stole a portion of the demonic god's powers at the periphery of the battlefield and channeled the consciousness into my consciousness? Fang Xinjian frowned and said, "Then what on earth am I? A clone? A duplicate?" The black-clothed man stared at Fang Xinjian and said, "I once tried my best to hide your existence, but due to the misalignment of spacetime, I temporarily left Miracle World. I didn't expect that you would be discovered by them." Zhua Qingtsang. Fang Xinjian found out his name from the information the other party had given him. "What are you thinking of doing? How did you go up against demonic god-level powers?" Fang Xinjian looked at this person with an extremely complicated expression. This person could be considered his father? Brother? Original body? Or what? Fang Xinjian could not put his finger on it. However, the thing that astonished him even more was that the other party had the power to go up against demonic god. He had seen with his own eyes how the other party was like an unrivaled assassin, crushing the other party's attack that had extinguished the singularity with a single strike. Fang Xinjian was extremely curious about how the other party had managed to go up against the demonic god's powers as a human. Go up against demonic gods? Zhua Qingtsang fell silent for a moment before saying slowly, "Your lifespan conversion technique is equivalent to 2 plus n. The increment is the number of addition, and your battle prowess keeps on increasing in this manner of +2 +3 +4 +5 +5. In the multivariate universe, this is already considered a top-notch cultivation technique. And the increment of my battle prowess is 2*n. Each time I cultivate, the increment is multiplied by a multiple of *2 by 3 by 4 *5 by 6 by 7. This can be considered as a top-notch cultivation technique in the multivariate universe. However, for demonic gods like Li Anping, the increment is 2 to the power of n. Right now, his powers after every second are several thousand or several 10,000 times stronger than the previous second. And the white demonic god, who is at the pinnacle among demonic gods, integrates at least 1 Li Anping every second. Therefore, it's almost impossible for him to rely on his own powers to go up against them. Zhua Qingtsang did not say anything. He merely took a long look at Fang Xinjian and said, "Perhaps you're his only hope, the final salvation. I hope that his choice this time around isn't wrong." "What do you mean? What on earth are you thinking of doing?" Zhua Qingtsang did not reply and merely tapped out with a finger. 1024 streams of light flashed in void space and entered Fang Xinjian's conjured physique, turning into 1024 types of strange powers that stabilized in his body. Concurrently, many incantations kept on appearing in Fang Xinjian's consciousness. This is the cultivation technique for quantum organs. Cultivate this within a day. Right now, if you can't even complete the quantum organs within a day, then you'll have no hope of attaining the demonic god realm for the rest of your life. There's no need to even talk about anything else. The duo's exchange was completed in almost a few seconds. Just as Fang Xinjian was feeling astonished by the densely packed knowledge that had suddenly appeared in his mind, waves of extremely massive and majestic qi activities descended from void space. That feeling was as if the entire universe was pressing down on him. Fang Xinjian's conjured physique started to break down and break apart without him realizing it. He could clearly sense that 12 gazes were looking at him, either with a hint of mockery, rationality, calmness, maliciousness, or coldness. They traversed countless space-time and endless universes to look at him. Simultaneously, Zhuoqing let out a cold snort, and pure white light appeared all over his body. That light was so vast that it seemed to contain all the truths in the world beyond the world. Unify Tao. As a soft bellow rang out, the white light tore apart the black robes he was wearing. Terrifying powers shot out from countless universes, turning into countless white tentacles that extended out from void space and pierced into Zhuoqing's body. Chapter 1157. Using one's heart to replace the heaven's heart, using one's body to transform into everything in the world. This is... Fang Xinjian's eyes narrowed. He sensed a familiar aura from these tentacles. It's the god of universal truth, White's power, the strongest expert among the 13 demonic gods, the formless and formless origin, was also known as White by countless people. In Miracle World, he was known as the God of Universal Truth. Some worlds referred to him as God, the Source, the Akashic Records, the God of Creation, and so on. Right now, Zhuoqing seemed to have received the support of White's power from countless worlds. Fang Xinjian even sensed that there were many even more special things involved. It was as if the timeline produced by some kind of universal chain was swaying incessantly. As the long robe dissipated, Zhuoqing's long black hair scattered in void space. Right now, his skin was emitting a faint white light. That was his body releasing a tremendous amount of electromagnetic signals and photon currents outside his body every minute and second. The most eye-catching thing was that a white halo connected from his right shoulder to his left shoulder, gathering behind his head. Right now, Zhuoqing had entered a state that he called unification of Tao. He was in a state of quantum resonance. In this state, the powers of the entire universe were directly received by him through quantum resonance, becoming a part of his body. That was not all. As more and more white tentacles extended out from void space, they pierced into his body one after another. More and more parallel universes also gradually became a part of his body. As his body's state changed, his expression became increasingly savage. White spots extended out from his pupils and slowly extended out toward his entire body. As these white spots extended out, the agony on his face also became increasingly intense. Streams of white light even flowed out slowly from the corners of his lips like air currents. To think that he managed to reach this stage. A long sigh suddenly rang out in Fang Xinjian's mind, causing him to be slightly stunned. He soon found the source of that voice and saw that the portion of information in his consciousness that belonged to the divine gate reversal had turned into a blurry human figure. Parosas? It's you? It was the powerhouse that Fang Xinjian had experienced before, the one who had formed a body with countless planets and had given him the Gate of God's reversal technique. Clearly, even if this Gate of God's reversal was purely a message, it was also the secret door he had left in Fang Xinjian's body, allowing him to appear here and witness this shocking battle. Parosas did not reply to Fang Xinjian. Instead, he sighed and said, "Right now, Zhuoqing's quantum resonance isn't limited to just one timeline. Even other parallel universes are under his control. Did he borrow Bai's strength?" White represents the essence of countless worlds and life forms, so it would indeed be a perfect match for the Tao integration stage. Quantum resonance? Tao integration? What's that? Fang Shijian asked. Peroses did not say anything. With a single thought, a large amount of information appeared in Fang Shijian's mind. Quantum particles can influence each other even across billions of light-years because they are one to begin with. It's like pulling one end of a rope, and the other end will move as well. It's the same for the universe formed by quantum particles. Long before the Big Bang, all matter and energy were one. They were condensed into an infinitely small point. The birth of the universe is just the expansion of this integrated thing. In essence, it still exists as a single entity, just like a balloon that has been blown up. After activating the Tao integration stage, he can communicate with everything in the world and become the controller of this integrated entity. As long as it's within Zhuo Qingsong's sensory range, all matter, life, tangible, intangible, energy, mass, and even space and time can become a part of his body. Even you and I are no exception. This means that as long as he's willing, we can instantly become him. This is already an extremely powerful move, but right now, Zhuo Qingsong has taken it a step further. He borrowed Bai's strength to communicate with other parallel worlds. After all, ever since the Big Bang, the universe had been constantly splitting into new timelines due to different probabilities: explosion or collapse, death or existence. Each choice and each probability would cause the timelines to split up incessantly. It was like dense branches branching out from the trunk of a tree. Only when all the timelines and all the parallel universes were gathered together would they form a truly complete universe. Only when many complete universes were gathered together would they form the entire multivariate universe. For example, only when all the branches and leaves were gathered together would they form a complete tree. Only when all the complete trees were gathered together would they form the entire forest. Right now, Zhuo Qingsong's Tao integration stage is heading in the direction of grasping a complete universe. However, this state can probably only be performed in the universe that Bai controls. Moreover, the burden seems to be too great. It's really too forceful to borrow Bai's strength. Just by communicating with the many parallel universes and grasping the origins of the many worlds, he'll have to go up against Bai's corrosion time and time again. He's probably been preparing for this battle for a very, very long time. Fang Shijian looked at the white spots that kept on spreading out on Zhuo Qingsong's face. Zhuo Qingsong's expression had become increasingly savage, like a wild beast that was on the verge of death. His eyes emitted a pained glow. However, the activation of Tao integration stage did not seem to have ended. As more and more white tentacles pierced into Zhuo Qingsong's back, hints of light marks appeared in void space. They eventually turned into a man's phantom image that appeared behind Zhuo Qingsong. The man's face was like jade, and his long black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. His eyes emitted a confidence that everything was within his control, and his entire body exuded a disposition that was completely different from Zhuo Qingsong's coldness. It was a graceful, noble, and unapproachable disposition. The phantom image floated quietly behind Zhuo Qingsong like it was his shadow. At the sight of this man's phantom image's appearance, Perosa's countenance changed. The Mirage sect? How is that possible? However, a hint of understanding flashed in his gaze a short moment later. So that's how it is. No wonder. As this phantom image appeared behind Zhuo Qingsong, the pained expression on his face lessened by a lot. Leave. Go cultivate your quantum organs. At the next moment, as the other party's heart voice rang out, Fang Shijian felt as if his body was being dragged away by an invisible force. He seemed to leave this stretch of space-time at an immeasurable speed. In his senses, Zhuo Qingsong's back view became increasingly smaller, and he heard Zhuo Qingsong's final electromagnetic waves echoing out in endless void space. Who's going first? At the next instant, 12 streams of destructive power that were hard to fathom even after Fang Xinjian used all of his powers descended from the sky. All matter in the entire universe seemed to have been instantly torn into dust. It was as if 12 dinosaurs had been squeezed into a fish tank. Chapter 1158. By the time Fang Xinjian regained his senses once again, he had already appeared on a plain filled with green grass. The scenes of the series of battles from earlier were still vivid in his mind. The cultivation method for the quantum organs was also in his mind. However, what astonished him the most was, Zhuo Qingsong is going up against the other 12 demonic gods single-handedly? Fang Xinjian thought in astonishment. His mind was still filled with Zhuo Qingsong's final back view, as well as the endless 12 streams of power that had descended from the sky. In fact, after witnessing the series of battles between Li Anping and petrifying blazing disaster, Fang Xinjian already had an extremely clear understanding of the demonic god's strength. He had also personally experienced the intensity of the battles in the center of the battlefield. It could be said that fighting against any one of the demonic gods was already an extremely astonishing thing, let alone fighting against all 12 of them at the same time. Don't worry. Without absolute certainty, Zhuo Qingsong won't make a move. Moreover, with White's reinforcement at the very least, he won't die. Instead of worrying about him, you might as well worry about yourself. Perosa's voice rang out in Fang Xinjian's mind. You! Fang Xinjian raised his brows, and a pernicious aura appeared in his eyes. He was very wary of this mysterious expert who had left behind a secret door in his consciousness. Don't you want to know why Zhuo Qingsong is doing this? Fang Xinjian frowned and asked, You know? He thinks that you can help him break free from White's corruption and control, right? Perosa smiled and said, But it's clear that the other 12 demonic gods don't think so. They think that not only will your existence not allow Zhuo Qingsong to break free from White's control, but it'll also bring about a negative influence on White instead. After all, your bloodline and consciousness still come from Li Anping and Zhuo Qingsong. If White absorbs you completely, it's very likely that he'll be able to form a connection with Li Anping that the other demonic gods don't want to have. Perosa stroked his chin and said, On the other hand, even if you really succeed and get Zhuo Qingsong to break his connection with White, the other demonic gods probably won't be willing to see that happen either. Therefore, you're in luck. The 12 most terrifying, most powerful, and nightmarish characters in the universe are now all targeting you. After saying that, Perosa's let out a series of malicious sneers. Hearing this, Fang Xinjian's face darkened. He could feel the heavy pressure. The attention of the 12 demonic gods was probably the greatest danger one could encounter in the multivariate universe. Simultaneously, he checked his body's current condition and discovered that his martial will was still maintained at 1.2 million points. Moreover, unknowingly, he was already able to perfectly control this 1.2 million points of martial will. Is this the side effect of Li Anping's experience in the parallel universe when he possessed me? At the next moment, 1.2 million points of martial will shot out from his body, encompassing the entire planet in the blink of an eye. He first wanted to take a look at this planet's situation, but with just a slight glance, a hint of surprise appeared on his face. The planet in front of him was the miracle world that he had left previously. Not only that, but he had also jumped directly to the miracle world of the future. At this very moment, there was only 1 day left before the final 5 years were up. The entire planet's 9-tiered heavens, mages, and even the holy sea of truth's power supply had been lost. Clearly, the connection between the demonic god's powers and this world had been cut off. This was clearly another of Zhuo Qingsong's means. After sensing this information, a hint of comprehension flashed in Fang Xinjian's mind. Cultivating quantum organs within a day. So that's how it is. If it takes more than a day, Zhuqingsong will think that I no longer have any hopes of success and wipe me out to prevent me from becoming White's nourishment? Quantum organs. At the thought of this, Fang Xinjian then looked at the contents regarding the cultivation method for quantum organs. If one wishes to go up against the demonic gods, one must first grasp the ability to traverse timelines. One must be able to not be restricted to the past or the future and jump freely. Traversing timelines is divided into three major realms: information, energy, and matter. The starting realm is to be able to transmit information on timelines. Next is energy and then matter. At that stage, one will be able to move freely on timelines and surpass the existence of the laws of causality. This cultivation method that's what Qingtsang gave me combines the 1024 streams of powers that he left behind and turns them into quantum organs. After forming quantum organs, I'll gradually be able to have the ability to traverse timelines. Then, the cultivation of quantum organs. Fang Xinjian quickly scanned through the cultivation method for quantum organs. The 1024 types of powers that Zhuqingsong had planted in his body were known as life clusters. They were a special biological organ that could absorb all sorts of energies in the universe to cultivate. Moreover, they possessed all sorts of extraordinary powers such as temperature control, gravity, electric currents, invisibility, absorption, and so on. When the life clusters grew to a certain extent, they would be able to combine with each other and form quantum organs through the stacking of various abilities. The first step was very simple. With Fang Xinjian's current martial will of 1.2 million points, he only needed to slightly absorb the powers in the entire planet and the surrounding universe's vacuum, and the life clusters started to grow rapidly. The 1024 spots in Fang Xinjian's body started to flash very quickly, growing to their respective limit. Then they would only need to combine with each other through a specific method before they would be able to form quantum organs. Zhuqingsong also transmitted the method for this quantum organ's specific combination into Fang Xinjian's mind, calling it the Eye of Denouement. Fang Xinjian read through it repeatedly over 5,000 times within a minute. After ascertaining that there were no problems, he started to move the 1024 life clusters in his body and started the Eye of Denoument's combination. Void engine that needs to draw out propulsion backup pair annihilation propulsion furnace spacetime curvature detection time axis wiggler. After the 1024 life clusters with various special abilities were combined, they would obtain all sorts of strange abilities. These strange abilities would then combine with each other and produce new abilities. After 6 rounds of combination, a sparkling and translucent eyeball that was like a diamond or gemstone appeared on Fang Xinjian's forehead. It was like a third eye emitting strange electromagnetic and gravitational waves. This was the Eye of Denouement, the quantum organ that's what Qingtsang had specially designed for Fang Xinjian. Fang Xinjian could even occasionally see images that were hard to understand. It was as if the Eye of Denouement had unintentionally obtained information from parallel universes. Everything went smoothly. In almost over 2 hours, Fang Xinjian completed the Eye of Denouement. However, when he tried to activate the Eye of Denouement to obtain information from other parallel universes and timelines, he did not succeed. Chapter 1159. What's going on? After trying to activate the Eye of Denouement a few times without succeeding, Fang Xinjian recalled Zhuqingsong's one-day limit and finally understood that this was not a simple matter. Based on the introduction of the Eye of Denouement, this quantum organ is activated with the will. Through the powerful will, it penetrates through the past and future to transmit information. Fang Xinjian thought, it's definitely impossible for a martial will of 1.2 million to be insufficient. Then does the problem lie in the nature of the martial will? Although martial will had the word will in it, it was essentially a wave that could interfere with the physical world after the human brain kept on getting stronger. Penetrating through the past and future with the will, Fang Xinjian frowned and started to think about the profoundness behind this. Just then, a flash flashed before his eyes, and he arrived on a bustling street from the plains. His clothes were in tatters, and his body was emaciated as if he was malnourished. A hint of confusion flashed in Fang Xinjian's eyes, and he felt as if he had woken up from a distant dream. It was as if there was something very important seething in his mind. However, after thinking about it for a while, he could not think of anything. A short moment later, Fang Xinjian was stunned for a moment. This is bad. I'm going to be late. At the next moment, he started running toward the harbor at high speed. Right now, Fang Xinjian was a porter at Cursed Harbor. He needed to work for over 12 hours a day to barely be able to support himself. Although he would head to the night academy to cultivate every night, his improvement was very slow due to his poor attributes, ordinary aptitude, and lack of time and money. In Fang Xinjian's mind, Peroses looked at this scene with his eyes wide open. This sudden change. Is this a complete shift in the timeline? Logically speaking, Fang Xinjian has a portion of high-dimensional sensory abilities and should be able to remember the memories from before the timeline changed. He should even be able to retain his powers. Peroses frowned as he reacted. Unless the range of the timeline's changes encompasses all of the parallel universes that his projections and actual body are in. Is this a battle between demonic gods? The past has been changed. I don't have the ability to travel through time, and I can't even detect it. Peroses shuddered again. It's really terrifying. Such a large-scale migration of parallel universe timelines could only be caused by the battle between Zhuo Qingtsang and the demonic god in the past and future. It was because they were fighting as they moved around the timeline. It was just like the fight between Li Anping and the petrifying blazing disaster. The past and the future kept on changing, and it was the same for the fight between Zhuo Qingtsang and the 12 demonic gods. The universe's history had changed due to their repeated exchanges. The scope of the battle's effects had even surpassed a timeline and a parallel universe. When this influence extended to all the parallel universes Fang Xinjian was in, it caused his fate to change unknowingly. With Fang Xinjian's abilities, especially after he possessed a martial will of 1.2 million points, he could tear apart planets and destroy stars. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he could seize the sun and the moon or engulf the galaxy. However, due to the battle between the demonic gods, a top-notch expert like him did not even have the chance to react, observe, or resist. Thus, he ended up in his current state. Peroses felt an extreme chill in his heart. In fact, if all the universes that his clones and actual body were in were affected by the battle between the demonic gods, he would probably have disappeared from Fang Xinjian's consciousness. It would have been impossible for him to make use of the hidden door to appear here. This meant that he did not even have the chance to fight against the demonic god. Countless lives and civilizations in countless universes were affected by the battle between the demonic gods without even realizing it. Their fates were completely changed. Countless lives died and countless civilizations were destroyed. However, countless lives were born and countless races headed toward glory. Thankfully, my body exists in multiple universes, unlike Fang Xinjian. Although he exists in multiple timelines, they are all in different parallel universes of the same universe, on the bifurcations of the timelines. Just as Fang Xinjian was running toward the harbor, he took another step, and the space-time before his eyes changed once again. He was now lying on a huge soft bed, with a velvet blanket covering him gently. Complicated and exquisite patterns appeared in every corner of the room. Several tens of maids stood guard outside the room, waiting for their master's summons at any time. Opening his eyes, Fang Xinjian sat up slowly. Seething martial will seethed in his body, and with just a slight clench of his fist, it was as if he could hold the entire world in his palm. Sitting up and rubbing his head, Fang Xinjian's brows slowly furrowed. Just then, a pair of white jade-like arms wrapped around his body from behind, and a pair of large soft hands pressed tightly against Fang Xinjian's back. Prince said in a gentle voice, "Why are you awake so early?" Fang Xinjian put out his hand, patted Prince on the shoulder, and said, "It's nothing. It's just that I seem to have been dreaming." Prince smiled. "Haha, with your martial arts realm, you're still dreaming?" Fang Xinjian shook his head. Ever since he unified the Eastern and Western worlds and killed all the Tier 9 divine level experts, he no longer had any opponents in the entire world. However, for some unknown reason, every time he dreamed in the middle of the night, there would always be some voices ringing out in his mind. However, when he woke up, those voices would disappear. On the other hand, Prince's fair and tender small hands moved toward Fang Xinjian's lower abdomen. She bit down on Fang Xinjian's earlobe lightly. "Since you're awake, why don't you do some morning exercises?" In Fang Xinjian's mind, Peroses sank into a state of hesitation. He was thinking about the current situation, wondering if he should interfere or not. If he were to interfere, would he be implicated by the demonic god's battle? However, not long after, the timeline jumped once again. This time around, Fang Xinjian was running on concrete road. There were streams of cars on the roads that extended in all directions, and all he could see were tall buildings and concrete forests. As an exchange student sent from Demonic City to Miracle World, Fang Xinjian was rushing toward the university to attend the opening ceremony. However, at the instant he turned a corner, a figure bumped into him fiercely. With a bang, Fang Xinjian fell to the ground. At the same time, he could sense that the other party had fallen onto him. The softness from her hands made him involuntarily squeeze them. "Ah!" A sharp cry rang out, and Fang Xinjian got a clear look at the young lady who was sitting on him. Lilia looked at Fang Xinjian, who was on the ground, with a flushed face. She held onto her chest and stood up quickly. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked like she was about to cry. Fang Xinjian scratched his head awkwardly. "I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." On the other side, Peroses looked at the modern city in front of him, and his brows furrowed even tighter. Even Miracle World's background has completely changed. This means that the demonic gods' battles are becoming increasingly ancient. If this continues. Chapter 1160. Fang Xinjian and Lilia, who had knocked into each other, realized that they were both students from the same university as them. Therefore, they headed to the school together. If nothing unexpected happened, this would be the story of a campus romance. However, just as the two of them were on their way to the school, Peroses finally spoke up. "Fang Xinjian." A tremendous amount of information instantly appeared in Fang Xinjian's mind, causing his mortal brain to almost crash. However, as the information continued to gush in, his eyes gradually turned from one of perplexity to one of clarity. Fang Xinjian. Thank you, Peroses. If it wasn't for you, I'd really have forgotten about all these. However, before they could lament the situation before them, space-time changed, and the timeline changed once again. There were many metal ruins, and there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere. The entire world was in the midst of a nuclear apocalypse. Fang Xinjian also became a hunter in the apocalyptic wastelands, specializing in hunting mutated demonic beasts to earn money. However, he had known the Peroses in his mind ever since he was young. However, he was dubious of what Peroses said. However, through Peroses' guidance, it was true that his physical attributes improved very quickly, and he even grasped some extraordinary powers that were similar to psychokinesis. Therefore, in the next few years, with Peroses' help, Fang Xinjian's strength increased rapidly. Concurrently, he swept through the apocalyptic wastelands and finally unified the entire wastelands 5 years later. Fang Xinjian's strength also reached the equivalent of Tier 5 of the Divine Armament realm, and he grasped a portion of high-dimensional sensory abilities. Perosas, you're right. I've recalled my past memories. Fang Xinjian, who had regained a portion of his memories, improved even faster. However, just as he spent several years to slowly recover his strength and memories, space-time changed, and the timeline changed once again. This time around, Fang Xinjian became a small worker in the city, working hard all day for the sake of work. As for Perosas, he looked at the scene before him and didn't say a word. He had already understood that no matter how much he helped Fang Xinjian, as long as the battle between the demons continued, everything he did would be for naught after each time the timeline shifted. It would be meaningless. If Fang Xinjian wants to reawaken and regain his power, the only way is to rely on himself. But to use one's willpower to cross time and space, how strong must one's willpower be? This time around, the speed of the space-time change was even faster. Perosas discovered that in less than a few minutes, space-time changed once again. Fang Xinjian was pulled from the modern city to the ancient society, becoming the son of a farmer. Perosas thought, however, Zhou Qingsong won't fight a battle, he has no confidence in winning. Since he really did something like this, could it be that he already has a backup plan? A day hasn't passed yet. Although the space-time change made it seem as if several hundred or even 1,000 years had passed in the timeline, it was actually just a change in the timeline and history. In Perosas' senses, the time he had experienced was merely a few hours. Therefore, Perosas quietly watched as Fang Xinjian went through all sorts of space-time transformations again and again. He acutely sensed that the frequency at which space-time changed and the speed at which the timelines shifted was getting increasingly faster. Usually, in less than 10 seconds after he arrived in a newly formed timeline, space-time would change once again, and the timelines would shift again. Moreover, this speed kept on increasing. From 10 seconds it became 5 seconds, 1 second, and even thousandths of a second, or even 10,000ths of a second. The world before him was so dazzling that Perosas almost could not open his eyes. From this, he could tell the intensity of the demonic gods' battle. There would be a battle that would affect the changes of several tens to over 100 parallel universes almost every 10,000th of a second. Moreover, this speed was still increasing. In the end, all sorts of blurry light and shadows kept on flashing before Perosas. As the speed at which the timelines changed got increasingly faster, all of his sensory abilities seemed to gradually lose their effect. All physical matter, space-time, and energy became blurry, making it hard for one to grasp them. At the next moment, a crystalline sphere that was about the size of the moon and exuded a transparent glow trembled slightly outside space-time. This sphere's appearance was clearly very similar to the Eye of Denouement that Fang Xinjian cultivated. Right now, with each time the timelines changed, a tremendous amount of data and information would cross the limits of space-time and arrive in this huge version of the Eye of Denouement. A tremendous amount of information kept on seething in the huge Eye of Denouement. Each stream of information contained Fang Xinjian's consciousness in a parallel universe. These consciousnesses were placed together like venomous insects, and they kept on fighting and engulfing each other until all other consciousnesses were wiped out, with the exception of Fang Xinjian himself. As more and more information gushed into the Eye of Denouement, more and more consciousnesses kept on fighting and killing each other under the mountain of electric signals. The tremors of the entire Eye of Denouement became increasingly intense. When it reached a certain limit, a brand new consciousness was born. Fang Xinjian felt that his consciousness had appeared amidst a stretch of chaos. He seemed to have experienced many rounds of endless battles and killings before he finally woke up with great difficulty. In fact, he had indeed gone through countless battles and experiences. Each time his consciousness from a parallel world entered, both parties would start fighting and engulf the other party's consciousness. It was as if he had fought against countless versions of himself from parallel worlds and engulfed their consciousnesses. Within a short few hours, He felt as if he had gone through several billion years. His long life and countless experiences filled up his mind, pressing down on his original life. Compared to his original life of over 20 years, these experiences seemed to take up the majority of his time. However, he knew that these experiences were not real. They were not his true experiences. Fang Xinjian could only use all his might to suppress these experiences and thoughts that he had engulfed. Time and time again, they were destroyed and suppressed. Fang Xinjian's will continued to integrate into various martial arts concepts. It was like a divine sword that grew increasingly sharper, slashing and suppressing these thoughts one by one. This was also Zhuo Qingsang's true goal. He had long since prepared this eye of denouement that was the size of the moon for Fang Xinjian. The eye of denouement that Fang Xinjian had cultivated was merely a tool for him to connect to this place. With this eye of denouement and the battle with the 12 demonic gods, he could create several 10,000 or even hundreds of thousands of time changes in a single second, as well as the birth and destruction of the universe. He could be said to be borrowing the powers of the 13 demonic gods to accelerate Fang Xinjian's improvement, making his will increasingly sharp like a sword. Chapter 1161. This was a pure cultivation method for the will. It did not increase any powers and was only for the sake of cultivating Fang Xinjian's will to the point where it would be indestructible and even able to transcend space-time. Any living creature in the multivariate universe would probably break down and dissipate, finding it hard to persevere through a similar method. However, this was clearly not the case for Fang Xinjian. Due to the origins of his bloodline, the stimulation from his own experiences, and the nurturing of his martial arts cultivation, his willpower and tenacity had completely surpassed the imaginations of all living creatures. His obsession to survive had also allowed him to keep on living. Fang Xinjian continued to advance toward the limits of his will. His will was like a crystalline, translucent, and infinitely sharp longsword. No matter what he experienced, it would not waver in the least. His thoughts even started to transcend parallel universes, transmitting information to the bodies of those parallel universes. Relying on his will to transcend space-time to transmit information, being indestructible and having no regrets even in death. In many worlds, this was already the so-called Saint Realm. In void space, Zhuo Qingsang lifted his head. Is it done? Being able to use his will to transcend space-time to transmit information was the first step, as well as the most difficult step. If it was not because he did not have enough time and Fang Xinjian had been discovered, Zhuo Qingsang would not have been willing to take such a risk. However, right now, Fang Xinjian had succeeded. He could see countless pieces of information being sent to the timelines that kept on changing. The Fang Xinjian in these timelines then sent back information. In the timelines that kept on changing, Fang Xinjian's will transcended countless spacetime, forming a network for transmitting information. The stimulation to his will and consciousness instantly became even greater. At almost every moment, Fang Xinjian was simultaneously going through several 100,000 or even several million experiences from different timelines. A tremendous amount of information filled up his mind, tempering his will like a whetstone. Therefore, 1 hour later, he started to be able to transmit energy between timelines. 3 hours later, he started to be able to transmit physical matter. Fang Xinjian finally started to gain the ability to move on the timelines, gradually becoming a true high-dimensional life form. In the void, the little boy, who was wrapped in yellow radiance, snickered as he looked at the moon-sized eye of denouement in the distance. Beside him, a golden vortex slowly appeared. It was the metal demonic deity, one of the 13 demonic deities. It was a high-level existence known as the vortex of hope and despair. Petrifying blazing disaster. You planted the mark of the anti-logic tribe on him? If you want to surpass the ultimate, you must first surpass logic. The little boy smiled. How could there be any mistakes in my creation? Now that he has divinity, humanity, and logic, the things he can do are limitless. But he still can't be the ultimate. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, that is the ultimate. If the ultimate will appear, then he has already appeared. The vortex of hope and despair's voice was calm and filled with extreme rationality. I've always believed that the ultimate has long existed in our multiverse. The only reason we haven't discovered it is because the ultimate doesn't want us to discover it. No. The petrifying blazing disaster's eyes narrowed, and there seemed to be a fervent glow flashing in them. There's another possibility. If the ultimate has long existed but we haven't been able to discover it, then we might not exist in the real timeline but in a kind of logical structure. The vortex of hope and despair spun slightly and said, "A logical structure? There's indeed such a possibility. But if that's the case, the universe we're in might just be a dream, a record, or some kind of illusion. So, everything is built on an illusion. Can you guys finally understand this logic?" A pink rabbit slowly appeared out of thin air. His eyes seemed to be filled with blood vessels, and his entire body exuded a contradictory aura of madness and sweetness. The entire multivariate universe is built on a huge lie. We're just a scenery in someone else's dream. I'll prove that the entire multivariate universe is meaningless. The petrifying blazing disaster said slowly, "No, the seat of illusions. Our existence isn't meaningless. There's a kind of understandable reason that surpasses everything else. Fang Xinjian's growth will ultimately prove that my theory isn't wrong." In the instant the three parties were communicating, two streams of power, one white and one silver, seethed in Fang Xinjian's body. It was as if they had darted out from endless void space and were channeling into his body. At this moment, Fang Xinjian finally understood Zhuo Qingsong's plan. Zhuo Qingsong's goal was to let him rely on his bloodline and consciousness's ability to transcend space-time to connect with the powers of the white demonic god and the silver demonic god with his extremely powerful will. If he were to do this directly, his consciousness would instantly be crushed into dust by the two powers. However, he now had the possibility of enduring it for a moment. For some reason, the petrifying blazing disaster went with the flow and even added the anti-logic tribe's brand on him, greatly increasing the chances of success. At the next moment, a hand grabbed onto Fang Xinjian's head. It was Zhuo Qingsong. Unification of Tao. At this moment, Fang Xinjian and Zhuo Qingsong seemed to have become one person. Zhuo Qingsong had been corroded by white incessantly to begin with. Now that Fang Xinjian and Zhuo Qingsong had become one person, an even more turbulent power that belonged to the white demonic god gushed into Fang Xinjian's body. It kept on corroding everything he could sense. Simultaneously, the power that belonged to the silver demonic god, which was gushing in from void space, seemed to be contending against white. At this moment, it was as if Fang Xinjian had become the battlefield of two demonic gods. However, at the next moment, the silver power broke through the limitations of space-time and fled toward the timeline. Endless white power shot out from Zhuo Qingsong's body, going after the silver power that was fleeing. A gleam flashed in Zhuo Qingsong's eyes. "It's done. White, breaking away from my body. Is this also your wish?" However, under the control of absolute rationality, this has become a cage that you're unable to achieve. It's starting. They're descending toward the multivariate universe's starting point. As long as they reach the starting point, they'll definitely be able to prove my conjecture regarding the ultimate. At the sight of this scene, the vortex of hope and despair instantly turned into a stream of golden light and followed after white and silver. The starting point of the multivariate universe will only be a stretch of nothingness. It's because it's built on lies to begin with. The illusory seat turned into a stream of pink light and followed after them. The young boy, who was the incarnation of petrifying blazing calamity, smiled, and his body also slowly sank into void space. However, his eyes were fixed firmly on Fang Xinjian's body that kept on changing. His eyes were filled with fervor and excitement. Come, attain the external path and wipe out all demonic gods' existences. Use a mortal's body to grasp the heavenly crown's authority. Surpass logic and not exist. Be born. Let's begin. Demonic Godfall. Chapter 1162. Just as the four demonic gods, white, silver, gold, and pink, were descending toward the origin of the timeline at the same time, beyond countless universes, a galaxy that was flashing with a green glow started to tremble. Electromagnetic waves that were so powerful that they seemed to be substantial kept on transmitting and gathering. The fall of the demonic gods has finally begun. The strongest living beings in the universe are gathering at the origin of the universe. Endless chaos is about to descend. The entire multivariate universe is about to enter the darkest, most chaotic, and most unpredictable era in history. A green parrot flew in the green galaxy and squawked, "Tide of chaos, aren't you afraid that you'll be crushed by the time comes?" None of them are to be trifled with. Also, don't pretend that you don't know Lianping's and White's motives. No, I've always believed that everything in the multivariate universe was born from our consciousness. Everything we have comes from that first wisp of wisdom. The green demonic god, the tide of chaos, said with great yearning, and only chaos is the essence of wisdom and consciousness. Our universe was born in a stretch of chaos, and it will also meet its end in a stretch of chaos. The waves of the sea of chaos will cover every corner of the multivariate universe. This is the eternal truth of this world. As they spoke, the two demonic gods, green and green, also descended toward the origin of the multivariate universe. The future of the universe will welcome eternal chaos because of the disappearance of the demonic god. Green sighed and said, "The past of the universe will also welcome the tides of chaos because of the arrival of the demonic gods. Even I can't go against this tide anymore." At the same time, the other demonic gods also descended toward the origin due to various reasons. On the other side, in a golden palace hidden in void space, there seemed to be an endless number of densely packed golden figures gathered. Each of them had an overwhelming aura, and their mountainous and ocean-like powers kept on whistling to and fro in space. The golden palace that had gathered together was like the hall of the gods, giving off an extremely solemn and powerful feeling. In the center of the palace, Bai Xinghe from the country of delusions sighed softly. The fall of the demonic gods has begun. Everything is as His Majesty has predicted. The 13 demonic gods will head toward the origin of the entire multivariate universe together to search for the ultimate answer. From today onward, there will be no more demonic gods in the world. Behind Bai Xinghe, a beauty whose skin was as fair as snow, wearing a royal robe and a yellow crown, stood up and said softly, "Human beings will become the dominators of the multiverse. An era of infinite possibilities is about to arrive." At the next moment, the profound web that connected the entire country of delusions was released from the young lady's body. The mysterious net was a great masterpiece that the silver demonic god, Lianping, had created when he created the country of delusions. As a network that connected all the members of the country of delusions, the mysterious net could not transmit information at will. It could even transmit energy and matter. At this moment, the young lady dressed in the royal robe activated the entire Xian net. Endless information was emitted from her body and then channeled into all the members of the country of delusions through the Xian net. At this moment, the billions of humans in the entire multiverse received the message she sent. Electromagnetic drive, consciousness reorganization, quantum computation, quantum immortality, superstring life, universe tree. Everyone was shocked to discover that what they had obtained was the cultivation method of their eternal leader, the silver demonic god, Lianping. It was the method to become a demonic god. In the falling space-time, white and silver light intertwined together. A human figure that was wrapped up in silver light shouted, "Bye, you've already lost. The future of the multiverse belongs to humans. From today onward, there will be no more demonic gods in this world." The white light fluctuated slightly, forming a man who did not look much like the other party. However, the man's gaze was as cold as a machine's. "Lianping, you've long known that humans are meaningless to me." Bai's voice was cold and rational. As an existence with absolute rationality, he would not normally communicate with the other party. However, this interaction could increase his chances of winning. On the other hand, you, who have given up on the country of delusions and lost your beliefs, will become a part of me. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Countless voices reverberated to and fro in void space, just like the shouts of all the living beings in the entire multiverse. Bai's silver body was slowly encompassed and covered by endless white light. Right now, Lianping had given up on continuing to manage the country of delusions. He had given up on the ideals that he had been holding onto for a very long time. To Bai, this was the best opportunity. "Lianping, have you finally realized it? Humans are hopeless to begin with, and the so-called utopia will never exist. After we leave, the entire country of delusions will probably fall apart within 10 years. The one who gave up on them is you. Bai, you, who are absolutely rational, are still unable to understand that sometimes, giving up is for the sake of obtaining. If I have to give up my persistence for the sake of my ideals, I have nothing to fear." However, faced with such engulfment and assimilation, Lianping's expression did not change. He said, "The future of humans can already be left to humans themselves. They no longer need my protection. On the contrary, my existence has restricted their limitless possibilities. It's the same for you demonic gods. This world doesn't need you guys." As he spoke, his entire body started to crumble and shatter. "If giving up on my persistence can bring humans a truly limitless future, then how can the legendary utopia not be in this limitless future? There's one more thing that I forgot to tell you. I've stopped cultivating as a superstring life form a long time ago." Silver and white light mixed together like pigments. The white light started to struggle intensely, but it was unable to break free from the restraints of the silver light. "Lianping, what is this?" Amidst the many-minute choices, each of Bai's choices had a 100% probability of being correct. He would never be able to make a second choice, and he was trapped in an endless number of correct choices. Absurdity prison. Bai, you, who are absolutely rational, can never think of escaping from the prison of rationality. Lianping looked deeply in a certain direction in void space. The scenes of his faraway hometown seemed to appear in his senses once again. A country without the interference of demonic gods will have a future filled with endless possibilities. Amidst these endless possibilities, there'll definitely be a beautiful future that I wish to see. It's a pity that this time around, I'm really too tired. Lianping closed his eyes slowly. At the next moment, the silver light shattered inch by inch, completely merging together with Bai's light. It turned into a stretch of silver-white waves that plunged down toward the universe's starting point. Chapter 1163. The 13 demonic gods fell toward the origin of the universe. Even demonic gods could not occupy an endless timeline. As they continued to advance toward the origin of the multivariate universe's timeline, the time they existed in also kept on moving forward. Unknowingly, the powers of the demonic gods disappeared from the multivariate universe. Then, space-time changed. In everyone's memories, the powers of the demonic gods had disappeared for 100 years. Then, 1,000 years. 10,000 years, as the demonic gods continued to fall, the memories of the demonic gods in the multivariate universe became increasingly distant in the memories of the many living creatures. In the end, they gradually disappeared from everyone's memories. Only a little bit of them was left in the records of the most ancient civilizations, but they also disappeared very quickly. However, just as the 13 demonic gods left, Fang Xinjian also entered a strange change. Although White's and Silver's powers had left, the influence they left behind did not disappear so quickly. In the huge Eye of Denuma, the powers of the anti-logic tribe and Fang Xinjian's will gradually turned into a brand new power in his body under White and Silver's pressure. However, many people clearly would not watch calmly as the Eye of Denuma quietly changed here. In void space, a snow-white battleship slowly appeared. In the command center of the battleship, Urbian and the Silver Mage King looked at the Eye of Denuma in the distance. "Thankfully, we made it in time," Urbian exhaled. "The demonic gods have completely left. If it wasn't because of our superdimensional sensory abilities, we'd probably have forgotten about their existence." The Silver Mage King did not say anything. Ever since the silver demonic god Lianping fell to the origin and completely released the country of delusions restrictions, allowing all humans to develop freely, the Silver Mage King's mind had become increasingly confused. Behind them, a young man wearing dark golden long robes, a golden crown and cloud-like shoes walked out slowly. His eyes were very bright, like the brightest stars in the night sky. This man was saintly from the country of delusions. He was also the leader of the Saint Association. He was the one who had sent people to get in contact with the Silver Mage King. At the same time, he was also the third son of the silver demonic god Lianping. Thankfully, when Fang Xinjian obtained the ability to traverse timelines, he woke you guys up, allowing me to rush over in time. Looking at the Eye of Denuma before him, the corners of Sage Li's lips curled up into a smile. "What an incredible item! Prepare to capture it." Urbian asked, "Is Fang Xinjian still alive?" "He's alive. The quality of the Eye of Denuma that's what Qingtsang created is very good, and the damage to its physical structure won't threaten his life. What's even more valuable is the bloodline and brand that he grasps, allowing him to get used to White and Silver's powers. He might be the last trace left behind by the demonic gods in this world." Li Xing calmly said, "My foolish sister has agreed to Father's plan. The entire multiverse will soon be plunged into unprecedented chaos, and Fang Xinjian will become our most powerful weapon." At that moment, a warning came from the battleship. Capture failed. "I can't touch the Eye of Denuma. I can't see through the Eye of Denuma." Li Xing's gaze froze. "What's going on?" "The anti-logic tribe's brand." A short moment later, after reading the battleship's capture report, he frowned and gave an order: "Prepare to set up a defensive formation and surround the entire Eye of Denuma." In the years that followed, the Eye of Denuma became an important base for the Holy Society. Li Sheng was constantly thinking about how to make use of Fang Xinjian in the Eye of Denuma. However, he discovered that this thing seemed to be getting further and further away from them. It would even disappear from people's memories at times. Right now, in the world within the Eye of Denuma in the vast void space, there was only a lone planet floating and rotating slowly. Everyone and everything on the planet, the Western Land, Eastern Land, and even Fang Xinjian's hometown, Earth, had been relocated to this planet. Zhou Qingtsang stood in void space and looked at this brand new world. A hint of speechlessness appeared in his eyes. "How arrogant are you? Is your goal to open up a new multivariate universe?" Fang Xinjian appeared before Zhou Qingtsang. As he looked at Zhou Qingtsang, his eyes gleamed with an unfathomable glow. "Is it really possible to return to the multivariate universe's origin and search for that very first one in the endless spacetime? So, your goal is to create a new multivariate universe?" A new multivariate universe that has no connection with our multivariate universe. Zhuo Qingcang sighed and said, "This is probably even more difficult than searching for the entire multivariate universe's origin. To begin with, the multivariate universe contained an infinite number of possible universes. It included everything that existed and could exist. In order to create a new multivariate universe based on this foundation, not only must it contain everything in the multivariate universe, but it must also sever all connections with the multivariate universe, becoming a new and absolutely isolated system." Fang Shijian did not say anything. He merely beckoned with his hand, wanting to send Zhuo Qingcang out of this world. Although he had moved over most of the people and things from Miracle World's central continent and Earth, he was not willing to let Zhuo Qingcang stay here. After all, existences like Zhuo Qingcang, Erbian, and the Silver Mage King had too strong a connection with the multivariate universe. They would also have a great impact on his subsequent plans. Zhuo Qingcang cut open space with a finger, and a beautiful figure slowly walked out from it. Looking at the figure, Fang Shijian's eyes narrowed slightly. The person who came was clearly Fang Yueru, his mother, or rather, his elder sister. "That's right. I've revived her," Zhuo Qingcang said coldly. "Now I can stay in this universe, right?" Fang Shijian frowned and asked, "What on earth do you want to do?" Zhuo Qingcang said calmly, "I'm just looking for a place to retire." Although Fang Shijian appeared displeased, he did not stop Zhuo Qingcang again. "Oh right. I still have some luggage." As Zhuo Qingcang spoke, under Fang Shijian's impatient gaze, two Earths slowly appeared in void space and crashed into Fang Shijian's world. Fang Shijian said furiously, "Aren't you the only one?" The more variables there were, the more difficult the plan would be. Zhuo Qingcang shrugged. "I've got to bring my wife, daughter, and friends over, right? Since they're here, then their friends and relatives will have to come as well, right? I can't just abandon the cats and dogs at home without someone to feed them, right? There's also the house, garden, farmland, cars, computers, and other miscellaneous stuff. I can't just abandon them like that, right? I'm old and used to living up there. I won't be able to get used to changing places." The corners of Fang Shijian's lips twitched. He looked at the two planets that had started to spin in void space, and felt a slight headache. Suddenly, he saw a huge dragon-shaped life form leaping in the atmospheric layer. He said helplessly, "Then what's with this?" You mean a dog?" Zhuo Qingcang blinked and said, "What's wrong? Are you not allowed to bring pets here?" End of the book. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.